got Bruce on. Might as well do a little coach's corner.
That's right.
Here.
That's,
You are.
He is. Matter of fact, he is here.
And you know what? It's a good time for you to be on this show because we've had a lot of news surrounding the coaches in the league this week with the Montreal Canadiens relieving Claude Julien and Kirk Muller of their duties as coaches. So, you know, we're kind of curious to pick your brain about what that experience must be like. We talked earlier in the show about Dom Ducharme taking over and what that's like, but I mean, you've been fired.
So many times. Go ahead. You can say it.
A couple of times. A couple. Like for me, the first we talked yesterday, and it was like, you're uniquely qualified in this circumstance because there's good days and bad days in the life of a coach, right? And yes, getting fired is a bad day, obviously. What was the day like in your mind? What would it have been like for Claude Julien yesterday? Because coaches, as you know, it's 24 hours a day, and then all of a sudden it stops.
Well, I mean, one thing, you know, is you take so much pride in your work. It's like people get fired every day in walks of life and everything, but they don't go home and the whole world knows that they got fired. And that's the biggest thing. That was always the biggest thing with me is, okay, like I remember telling George, I'd say, okay, listen, George, do me one favor. Before you put out the release, give me an hour to tell my kids. Because I didn't want the kids to go to school and then find out that your dad was fired there. I wanted them to know beforehand. So, I mean, that was the big thing. And then all of a sudden you sit there and you say, okay, I don't want to take any calls because you know your phone is going to blow up. All your friends and your colleagues are going to give you a call, and you don't want to talk to anybody. You're pretty despondent because you know it's all over Montreal, all over Canada, all over North America. So you sort of, you know, you have to build yourself back up to get out in the world again because it's a tough deal. I know with me in Washington, it took a few hours, and I got so bored I started texting some people just to talk to people. I mean, because you're sitting there.
You're used to being so busy.
You're going to work at 6:30 in the morning, and you're supposed to be doing this plan, that plan, that plan. Now you're sitting on the couch, you're doing nothing, and you don't know what to do with yourself. Yeah. And it's a crazy bad feeling. And, you know, it's not like you go, oh, I'm still getting paid for the rest of the year. Let's go to Florida for a vacation, because your job is you want to work. That's what all coaches want to do. They want to get behind the bench and they want to be in the battle with their team. And they're hoping that the other thing is they're hoping that say, okay, listen, I know I got let go. What was the reason? Am I a bad coach? You start to second guess yourself all the time, and it's not a great thing until people start talking to you again about rehiring you. Then all of a sudden you start feeling positive about yourself again, and then it becomes, okay, yeah, people actually want me back. It's a good thing. Because I remember George phoning me at 11 o'clock that day, and he says, well, do you want to coach in the NHL again? And I says, yeah, are you nuts? Of course I want to coach. He says, do you want to coach tomorrow? And I says, get out, you're joshing me. And then he told me, expect a call. And then, so all of a sudden you go from sadness to, oh my God, this is great. People are wanting me, and you're going to be talking positive about the guy instead of talking negative about the coach. So I was real lucky in that department.
Yeah, you had, what, 4 days, 3 days?
Well, it was the same day, but I wasn't allowed to say it for a couple of days. And it was the same thing. I got lucky in Anaheim because the day after was when Chuck called me and Pierre Dorian called me, and so you knew you were going to get offers and some action. And this last one, though, when it happened, you're sitting there waiting. Now it's been the longest of my life. I'm sitting there going, what are we doing? If I didn't have you guys hanging around with, I'd be pretty despondent.
But it's a tricky time right now, too, because with the pandemic and with the work stoppage. And
the amount of coaches that were fired last year. I mean, there was a lot of turnover last year as well. So, you know, when you have a lot of coaches that are still in their first, I guess, calendar year of coaching, it's highly unlikely that a lot of coaches are going to lose their jobs. I'm curious to ask you, because I think with Julien, there was a sense that this was coming prior to the last couple of days. And, you know, he's been there for a few seasons. Some of the messaging coming out after the announcement is just about that maybe, like, his voice wasn't getting through anymore. Have you ever had a time where you sensed it was coming? And what is it like to continue to coach when you know you're on the, as cliche as it sounds, the hot seat? Like, when you're the coach on the hot seat, how does that impact your day-to-day in terms of trying to do your job when you know that Man, if I lose again, I'm fired.
You don't think about it, really. I mean, you know, like, I knew it was coming in Washington. I knew it was coming in Anaheim. I didn't know it was coming in Minnesota, but you knew it was coming, but you don't think about it at all. And it happens, and then you read, oh, you're on the hot seat, and then all of a sudden you get back into the mode of coaching with your team, and everything else you forget. You just forget. All you think is you're streamlined and mentally on what you have to do. But you can see signs once it's done. Oh, you know, the GM hadn't talked to me in 2 weeks. He didn't make this last trip, and he stayed away. You know, you feel these things, and I'm sure Claude and everybody else that's done it, I mean, has a sense sometimes that it could happen. The media usually gets a hold of it. I think I said it yesterday that I had heard from a source that, and I couldn't believe it, that Claude was on the hot seat. And I didn't believe it. Then they go out and lose, and then boom. Then it happens. But it's not very often you get completely caught by surprise.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about the other side of the coin now. Dominic Ducharme comes in, and, you know, going back to your time in Washington again, I mean, you were coaching the Hershey Bears. You get the phone call, and now that first day, you know, as a NHL head coach, it was a dream probably to coach in the National Hockey League, just like it's probably a dream for Dominic to do that as well. What was that for? What would his first day be like yesterday?
Well, he was tentative, as you saw on the interview here. Like, I mean, he's really looking for words, the right words to say. Like, inside his heart is going 100 miles an hour because this is his lifelong dream. On the other hand, a good friend of his that he was on the same staff with lost his job. So, I mean, you worry about that. With me, I was the minor league coach on a team that was in last place. And so you always wondered, you know, are they going to move the coach or not? But it's still, when you get the call, I got the call at 6:30 in the morning. Doug Yingst phones me and he says, Bruce, he says, expect a call from George McPhee in 5 minutes. And I said, what are you talking about? Well, what for? Did I lose my job? Was he getting rid of me? And he says, no. He started to giggle. He says, you just wait for a call in 5 minutes. And George got on the phone. He says, Bruce, would you like to coach the Caps? And I said, would I? Like a 2-year-old, like a 5-year-old kid getting his first bowl of ice cream. I mean, my wife, and I'm just sitting beside me, and I'm going, coaching the Caps. And then we went, and our son was 7 years old, and we grabbed each other when we hung up, and we're all jumping on the bed like 2-year-olds. Yeah. So I mean, it was a dream come true, and you couldn't believe it that it was happening, but it was happening, and I got lucky, you know.
And you did really well.
We had some success.
I remember those Caps team. That was bad. They were really bad, but you knew a lot of the young guys. It was from Hershey, and he stepped in, and they took off.
It was the easiest transition because I had coached 6 on the Calder Cup team the year before.
Yeah.
So you knew some of them.
So when I went out in there, and I brought all my luggage, and Brooks Lake meets me at the door, and he says, what are you doing here? I don't know. I got to go in and see somebody. I didn't know what to say.
All right. I got one quick one, though, I have to get in. Is like, when you're coaching and your team is struggling, right? Like you're today, right? There's teams out there that are struggling, and the first guy gets fired. Do you get a little shiver down your back? Because these things do happen in bunches sometimes. Do you start to worry because Claude got fired, maybe I'm going to get fired?
Yeah, like, I mean, I'm sure that's like, I'm not talking I'm going to. There's other people out there that are not having.
Teams that are struggling this year. There's a bunch of teams that are struggling.
It's a natural worry, you know. I mean, but again, you worry about it when you're home alone. But once you get to the rink, you forget all about it. You know, you forget that whether you got 1 year left on your deal or there's a lot of noise out there. You just do what you do, and hopefully the team gets turned around and you've dodged a bullet.
Well, it's one of those jobs, too, where your day-to-day is probably so busy that you don't really have time to dwell on anything. You got so much stuff to do. I'll ask you one more, and this is just, I'm just curious what your answer is. What is your favorite part of coaching? Like, is it looking at video? Is it, you know, talking to the guys? Is it seeing your team get better? Like, what was the favorite day-to-day part of it for you?
Watching them happy when you won. Like, I mean, the success, when you have success and you see the success on whether it's individuals' eyes or teams' eyes, and everybody's happy and they're pumped up, that's what it's great being a coach. Like, I mean, it's tough when you're losing and you got to do the press conference. And I always said, I said, hey, listen, you got to take the good with the bad, and you got to do the right thing. So, I mean, those were tough because you don't like to go in front of and have people criticizing you, but you certainly liked it when the team is jumping up and down. And you know what? Everybody does it now. They give a hat away or something away after a win. And to see the team jump up and everybody be happy for each other, that's when you used to go in the room with a big smile on your face.
Yeah, that's what it's about, right?
Yeah,
it's that emotion. It's like people talk about money all the time and all this. How could this player be unhappy like they're making X amount of money? But it really does come down to why we love the game in the first place, which is accomplishing something as a team and winning,
being
and then
experiencing
that joy as a unit. So this was really great. I love when we get to pick your brain. So hopefully we'll have to call our boss, see if we can get Bruce on the show.
That's right. We will. Or we'll kidnap him.